Welcome to Footnotes, a behind-the-scenes look at what we value and why it matters here at Foothill Church in Glendora, California. My name is Stephen Coppenrath. I'm one of the pastors on staff, and I am your host. All right, well, we are honored to have one of our organization's most faithful and tenured leaders, Mr. Robert Gutzwiller, with us today. But you may know him as my kids do, as Mr. G, or as we'll refer to him today, just as Bo. And Bo's been the principal and superintendent of Foothill Christian School for the last, 35 years?
34 maybe?
34
Since
years.
1987.
1987, okay. Which is amazing.
Yeah,
that's a long time.
Yeah.
So welcome, Bo, to Footnotes. I'm so glad you're with us today.
Yeah, Footnotes. Glad to be here. It's quite an honor, actually. And, when you start, using dates like 1987, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it's become my life's work. So it's been a joy to serve at Foothill. And it's been an adventure. It's been a great ride.
That's awesome.
And so recent events with COVID and everything has been unique in its own way. But yeah, I've just really been a privilege to be part of the Foothill family for all these years.
Yeah, it just means in a more rich sense, you've kind of seen it all in a lot of ways. You've kind of seen the ups and downs of education and school and all that. So
yeah, well, every year, I as we pray for the start of a new school year, it's always okay. Some things are going to be similar, but there's always things that are you didn't see coming,
right?
And that keeps you fresh, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, just by way of introduction, just tell us a little bit more about your family a little bit.
Okay. Well, I'm married to my wife Vicky for 40 years. We celebrated our 40th. Anniversary this past summer, and have 3 daughters, grown, married, 7 grandkids, 6 of whom actually attend Foothill Christian School or the preschool. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. That's great that they're here, and I'm getting to watch them move through the school grades. That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, Bo and Vicky have been a long time covenant partners at Foothill Church as well, and served in numerous areas. And as I mentioned, and as he mentioned, spent most of your professional career really at the school, growing, adding to the quality, the reputation of Foothill in many ways. And so FCS, Foothill Christian School, started in 1964. Is that right? And some people may not realize, obviously this podcast is for our church family in many ways, people who attend our church, who listen in on conversations. And some people may not realize that the school is absolutely an extension of our mission as a church to the community. And so, Bo, just to kind of start off, would you tell us a little bit about maybe some of those early days? Now, I realize you weren't there in 1964. 64 is a little bit, yeah, absolutely. But when you did start at Foothill, what was the school like back then? I mean, compare it to today a little bit.
Yeah, well, it was a good school. It was a strong school, and so that was nice. The facilities, there was only 2 campuses, the Baseline campus and Grand Avenue. And some of the facilities were just not, they were subpar. Okay. And so that was something that needed to be improved. That my first year was the first year the gym was built. Okay. I was like actually the second year, be the first full year the gym was available. And there was only 2 junior high classes, one 7th and one 8th grade class. And we had to grow that. And programmatically, there weren't as many enrichment or elective type courses. Right. So the co-curricular aspect of the program had a lot of growth and needed to be developed.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you came on, were you the principal to start off with? Or were
I was.
Just from the start?
I was,
yeah.
Right? I was pretty young.
Yeah.
And I know that the board took a chance on me. I felt called here. And that's an incredible story in and of itself. And but when you come to a board meeting and God told you you're supposed to be here. So it's like, but the board has to figure that out themselves, right?
God has to tell the board that same thing too. Yeah.
And so it's been that's been cool.
That's awesome. I remember hearing in my youth about Foothill Christian just by reputation. As you may remember, I went to Pomona First Baptist School in Pomona, and we played football and basketball against you guys. And I remember hearing about Foothill, and we were. Let me see. First Baptist School was the Panthers, and you guys were the Eagles,
right?
And but that's changed now this year, right?
Yeah.
We are now.
Yeah, we're the Falcons.
Falcons, yeah.
And that was a big change. It was hard for me to kind of accept that. I've always envisioned, us, known us as the Eagles. It was hard to envision us as something else. But there was the athletes, the coaches were pushing for a change because 7 out of the 10 schools in our sports leagues, they're all Eagles.
Yeah.
And so we were looking to separate ourselves a little bit from the crowd. So I let the kids vote and the staff vote, and it was overwhelmingly in favor of that change. So it's going to take a little getting used to. So this is our first year as the Falcons.
What a fun conversation. I mean, there's probably not that many biblical animals to try to choose from the start for. So it's like at some point it's like, let's just go Falcons. Yeah. Let's just go for it.
Yeah. Well, we just went with the alliteration, Foothill Falcons. Someone said Foothill Ferrets, but there were a few we just ruled out right away.
That probably doesn't work as well. Yeah. Well, I value Christian education. My kids go to Foothill Christian School. I went to private school, had the privilege and honor doing that personally. But Bo, would you tell us a little bit about the mission of our school specifically, and maybe articulate even the value of Christian ed in this time?
Yeah. Christian education is core to who we are. I think God intended his children to be educated in a system that honors him and includes him in every aspect. So from the arts to zoology, we need to incorporate or integrate faith and learning. So we want our kids to know that there is a God, and he loves them, and he invites them into a personal relationship with him. And so we have the challenge to help them to understand, to be able to discern on their own right from wrong. And we want them to own their faith. We don't want them to succumb to peer pressures or cultural pressures that they're bombarded with in the media and in youth culture. And so we want to help guide them through that and come alongside so that they know how to think and live and love based on what the Bible teaches.
That's good. Yeah, that's definitely obvious when you are a part of kind of the culture at Foothill Christian School, those things you're talking about. Okay, I want to give you permission here to just brag a little bit, put on your proud dad or granddad hat almost, and think about some ways that you're especially proud of the school, especially in the last few years. What are some areas you've seen the grace of God just go ahead of us and move in ways in our school?
Yeah, good question. I was at a administrators conference, and they said, "What's caught at your school?" Not necessarily taught.
Yeah.
And I never had it posed that way. And the first thing that came to my mind was our kids' worship. They're animated, they embrace, and so I think you would think that would be expected, but it's not always the case. Yeah. So I love the faith and action programs, the missions trips to the Dominican Republic. We've reached out to the Navajo Nation. We've done some urban plunge things with the Union Rescue Mission. So I really appreciate the culture of developing kids' faith. And I think that's I would have to start there. Yeah. But beyond that, Foothill, we're big on technology, and we're big on the arts. So I think there's been some growing distinctives for us in those two areas. And so, for example, in the arts, we have a strong orchestra program. There's probably 120 kids that are in the orchestra, and our top orchestra, not this past spring, but a year ago spring, actually performed at Carnegie Hall. And so that was really really a milestone. Wow. And our theater group is strong. And so the fine arts and art, those are big. And I think some of those are flagship programs. That's cool. Families enroll their kids here specifically for those programs. And of course, technology, you have to just stay up on technology. And so we've got a lot of technological resources that enhance the learning. It's a great time to be teaching because I don't have to talk about volcanoes. I can show clips of one erupting and all the things that you can do now with interactive smart boards and all of this. So the teachers have a lot of tools in their toolkit. Yeah,
those tools are, I'm sure, especially this year, pretty helpful to where we're at in terms of this global pandemic, and because this year's been different. And so as I think about the way that God has helped us and helped the school and the leadership there, just to put that bug in your ear or maybe other administrators' ear to make sure that we have what we need technologically. So take us a little bit behind the scenes for this year, though. How has this year been different in preparing? I mean, obviously it's different in so many ways, but how has the mentality looked like for you and your staff as you thought about the fall of 2020, technology, the way that teaching happens, all of those things?
Yeah. Well, the pandemic, when it comes to education aspect of that, we couldn't do what we are doing 5 years ago.
Right.
And maybe some of the technology was there, but not like it is today. So when we went into distance learning, our teacher stepped into that space. Very proud of them.
Yeah.
I think they did a great job.
I agree. Yeah.
But then, as we approached the opening of the school year, we realized that there was room for improvement. As good as it was, and as much as our families appreciated it, we realized we had to step up our game. And so our teachers really devoted themselves. Even over the summer, they just started developing, reading and putting things together so that in the end they could deliver an instructional program that makes sure the kids are learning and meeting their learning goals and mastering those concepts for each grade level.
Absolutely.
But creatively. And so they're prepared to give the kids a good experience that also includes the relational and the connectivity side of things.
Right. Yeah, I got to say, just as somebody who receives the benefit of, my kids go to Foothill Christian School, and there's this element of realizing there's a lot behind the scenes that happens on the school side, the administrative side, teachers preparing to offer up whatever we're doing this fall. And things change so fast as well. And so not only putting our best foot forward, but having another foot behind us ready to go as well with plan B and plan C as well.
Yeah. As we been on this journey, information would come to us, and we were always in a kind of a reactive mode to what we were learning. And it was always scenario plan, if this, then that. And the variables were a lot.
Yeah.
And it seemed like every time, given the information we had, that we would make some announcement. A day later, sometimes literally same day, we had to retract that statement because things changed. In fact, going back to the school closure back on March 13th, I remember the day. Yeah. That morning, I sent out a communication to our families. Oh, hey, some things are changing, but here's the path we're going. And then by that afternoon, stop, change the plans, come pick up your child. We're shutting the school down under mandate. And so that's how quickly things change. And even now, we still have some of that going on. So now, can schools reopen in person? Does it have to be a hybrid program? Can schools get the waiver? And so we're at that point now where it looks like the waivers are for LA County are going to become an option. And so my hopes have been dashed on the COVID rocks more than once, And I think that's been part of the key part of the journey is because, when you've been disappointed, how long does it take you to recover? And I think we've had to recover from disappointing news along the way. And God has helped us with that. We had to pick ourselves up and kind of reposition, kind of reboot and maintain positivity and hope and all of that for ourselves, and then to our students and families.
Yeah. I think that's kind of one of those things that you really realize that the weight of leadership really hits you in these moments, because it's not so much about just self-motivation or seeing things clearly from, God, help me with today personally. But as a leader, we're also we have the opportunity, but also the burden to be able to lift others up with that vision at the same time. And so I've seen you guys do a really good job of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Real quick, I was reading the story of David and his mighty men. David was outside of Bethlehem, and the Philistines were in Bethlehem, and he wistfully just said, what it would be like to have a drink from the wells of Bethlehem, and some of his mighty men, they got the idea under the cover of dark at night. They snuck through the enemy lines, got water, brought it back to David, right? And David poured it out. He said he wasn't worthy to drink it. It was like he poured it out as a drink offering. You read a lot about drink offerings, but what I do know about those is that often they were a supplement or a complement to another offering, maybe the sin offering, like the lambs and the goats. They were poured on top of it. And you mentioned leadership, and this is why I went to this story, is because I see my role the teachers they are living sacrifices. They are dedicating themselves to the call of God in their lives on Christian education, and they're putting forward a lot of sacrifices, right? And my job as a leader is to come along and pour the drink offering on top. And I think it just complements and actually kind of completes maybe their sacrifice.
As I was thinking about you, Bo, and just the way that, I haven't been here nearly as long as you have, coming up on 13 years this December, but since the beginning, I've always seen how when you walk into a room, there's this sense that people respect you, they want to hear what you have to say, and even in years before, Pastor Chris came, especially for the school crowd, there was a sense that you were acting as kind of a pastor to a lot of our families. And it's been a joy to see kind of behind the scenes and how you lead in those ways. One of the things that we can talk a little bit about is, I just want to ask you, how would you encourage families in this season? Obviously, the people listening right now mostly attend Foothill Church, but maybe they don't attend Foothill Christian School. Maybe they don't have maybe a great teacher or leader to look towards as far as that kind of educational umbrella. And so if you had the opportunity right now to sit with a family, FCS or not, how would you encourage them as they enter this school year?
Well, yeah, you're right, Stephen. Huge pressures people are under. Yeah. And I think that the main thing I would say, nobody asked for this, right? And everybody's been kind of thrown into it. And I would just encourage people to be patient with the teachers, right? Don't be so judgmental on the quality of instruction. And, we've all dealt with Zoom meetings, right? And I've been in some, and it almost never fails. Something can go wrong, right? And they do, and say, well, what happened that time? I've used Zoom all these times, and in this case, and now teachers are dealing with links to learning and connecting kids to through like Google Classroom, and so there's a process. So the beginning of school, be extremely patient, because the teachers have to help the kids and parents learn the routines. That's true when you're teaching in person, but allow time for the routines. Don't be so anxious for the academic piece to happen so quickly. That traction and that progress will come, but you got to build the infrastructure of the learning so that it's seamless and there's ease in using that. So I would say really be patient. But secondly, I think everybody needs to, and maybe more importantly, is everybody needs to approach this from a trauma-informed perspective.
What does that mean?
And what I mean by that is we need to recognize that the kids have experienced some level of trauma caused by COVID. I mean, they are experiencing, and we don't always see this, right? We don't recognize it. We forget how deeply and profoundly kids feel, but they're feeling anxiety about health and family. We had a situation last year where a student reported that they thought their grandmother was dying. She was having a hard time. She thought her grandmother had COVID, and it turned out not to be true. But that's how it was. It was right. It was the heightened sense of anxiety that the slightest thought pushed her in that direction. They're worried about their parents losing their job or finances, because parents aren't hiding these things from the kids, and nor should they. I'm just saying they're aware, and people may not be aware. They're the emotional issues, Stephen, that are caused by a disruption in relationships, right? That's real, and we need to recognize that. And that abrupt ending in March was hard for everybody.
It was traumatic. You're right.
Yeah, and so the loss of relationships for kids was harder than most people realize. So they're grieving a loss of routine as well, and especially those when transition years, they were going to high school or they missed a graduation. So there's a lot of that lingering. So I think the key thing is to support them, to tune into those kinds of things, and then don't expect the teachers to do all the teaching. Be part of helping to extend and enrich the child's learning. Homeschool families do this well. They find ways to make learning a joy. And if parents can have a positive attitude and not get frustrated with it, that gets transferred to the kids. And then I think it makes for a better experience for everyone.
Yeah, that's good. I think that, one of the ways that I've kind of seen these last few months through this lens of, if we're really going to get through this together, whatever community you're in, whether it's church or school or, whatever that looks like for you, there has to be a level, speaking to your first point, of giving people the benefit of the doubt. that when it comes to being patient with folks, it's
Yeah.
like, hey, man, my teacher's an idiot because A, B, and C. Well, or your teacher's human. And they're dealing with the rough morning too, and they're trying to get their kids to school or set up on their laptops as well, the same as you are, and just giving people this opportunity to think through, like, hey, can we be empathetic to what everyone's experiencing with the trauma that you brought up later on,
and you know what, Stephen, we're going to come out of this, and it's scriptures like out of the Psalms where it says God, He led us through the waters, the deep waters, but He brought us out to a wealthy place. And there's a lot of good that will come in the end if we invest wisely in our kids. And so there's a lot of this to have post-COVID value. And the life lessons, relying on God, and developing those relationships, I think, and cultivating it in our kids, those have a lot more value than this short period of time we're experiencing this.
That's good. That's good. Well, usually we have some type of action step. One of the things that I just want to encourage our listeners to do in this season is, if you would, just be praying. Be praying for Mr. G, for the administration at Foothill Christian School. Be praying for just the learning opportunities we have on our campus, and also just as you all are thinking about leading your families through this time educationally, just know that our church is praying for you as well. A couple questions, speed round that we've been doing the last few weeks. What's maybe a book or a resource that you would point people towards, that you've listened to lately, that you've immersed yourself in lately, that you would suggest to other people?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I try to read a classic novel every summer, and so I just read Hemingway's Farewell to Arms, and so that I'm not necessarily recommending that. I'm not going to comment on.
Was that
Ernest.
Your first time reading it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm not going to comment on Ernest Hemingway, a Pulitzer Prize winner. It would say more about me than him.
Okay. Yeah.
But I would not recommend it. No. I'm going to read a couple more just to make sure I really understand him as an author. But I would say I read a book called Beauty Will Save the World by Brian Zahnd, if I'm pronouncing that right. And it's basically the subtitle is Rediscovering the Allure and the Mystery of Christianity. That caught my attention because we're big on the arts, and we did that bias, bigotry, and bully exhibit. And basically what he's basically saying is that in a Western post Christian world, materialism, religion sometimes is more about power and political power. Those are the exact things that Christ resisted during his temptation in the wilderness. And so how do we rediscover or connect the arts and beauty? Because the gospel is a beautiful story of God's love for his son and for his world. And so the author tries to reclaim that aspect of the gospel. So it's really a great book.
We'll make sure to put those in the show notes. Another question, with the time at home, like many people, I've seen projects around the house that just have needed work.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, are you personally kind of more of when it comes to projects, more of a go to Home Depot, buy the supplies, do it yourself kind of guy, or do you like to hire professional help?
Well, I break more things when I'm trying to repair them. And I know that's a kind of a common adage, but I could start a comedy routine, on my...
Well, give us an example. What do you mean? Yeah.
Well, I tend to break them, right? So, one time I tried to fix my sprinkler system using Kaiser Rolls.
Like the bread?
The bread.
Bread rolls.
The bread rolls. And so... You
got to fill in the blanks there. What do you mean?
So I was trying to put the cap on the different sprinkler, the main part. I don't even know the words for these things, right? But it kept leaking water, and I couldn't get it to seal. And so I thought, well, what could I put to stop the water from leaking? So I thought, I'll put some bread in there because the bread would dissolve, and then I can put the wet cement on whatever it is that seals it so it doesn't leak. Right?
I'm kind of following you there. That logic.
Well, I put wheat bread in and it didn't work. Right, it dissolved too quickly. I couldn't get it to seal, so I literally went to the grocery store, got Kaiser Rolls and stuffed them in there thinking that would help, And in the end, I found out that they make a product that allows you to put on the PVC pipes while they're wet.
Yes.
And it will then still seal it and kind of make sure it doesn't leak. I didn't know that. But the funny part, it was like a total Seinfeld episode because later that day, Vicky comes down and she's in the kitchen. She goes, "Oh, Kaiser Rolls, who bought those?" boom, 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 right? And so
for what purpose?
Yeah, exactly. So I could go on, but I have lost my motivation to do a lot of.
Okay, we're hiring out now. That's the stage of life we're in now. Yeah, absolutely. That's good to know your strengths and weaknesses. Anyway, Bo, thanks so much for your leadership and for your example in the season. Appreciate you and your time, and thanks for being on Footnotes.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All right, well, we're out of time, but thanks for joining us for our podcast, Footnotes. Be sure to subscribe, and we'd also appreciate you sharing this resource with others, and even leaving us a favorable review if you feel so inclined. So until next time, Foothill, peace be with you.
Oh, Kaiser Rolls. Who bought those?